I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where we say yes to not reading books.
Not us. We say yes to reading the books.
We say yes to reading the books so you can say yes to not reading the books and say yes to listening to us talk about the books that you haven't read. And then you say yes in everyday life when someone says, have you read this book? You say, well, I'm close enough. And if you don't want to be close enough, if you don't want the books with a salty side of our opinions, then please, for the love of gosh, go somewhere else. But if you like it here, well, I'm so happy you came. I say yes. Welcome.
Beautiful. And Ashley, do you have any announcements you would like to say?
I guess I would like to say, hey, if you are feeling like the ugliest girl in the world, you're not, but you might be attacked by a syndrome. And we did make sweatshirts to help you stay cozy during an attack.
To raise awareness for this critical disease that's attacking our nervous senses and our psyches.
And our psyches especially. You can head to our website, celebritymemoirbookclub.biz.
Hell yeah, we're just two businesses.
And, get some merch. You can also check out our tour dates because, baby, we are coming to a town near you, I hope. Toronto, Chicago, Minneapolis, Nashville, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Denver, and San Francisco, California.
Okay, low-key, Nashville, do you hate us? Most of them are almost sold out, but not Nashville. Nashville, I guess, will be on the streets paying you guys to come see us.
If anyone knows Taylor Swift, ask her if she knows anybody in town. Claire, if you were to write a memoir about your life, what would you title last week's chapter?
French Girl Summer, Not So Soon.
Uh-oh.
So, ever since I moved back in March, me and Mac have been in a heated debate, ironically, about the coolness of our refrigerator. And I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm not an AC girl. I don't like things chilly. I hate going to the grocery store because they keep it so cold in there. I like it when a humidity just hugs you like a sweater. And me and Mac have been going back and forth about how he doesn't think our refrigerator is cold enough. And we're a milk household. And he's always like, the milk's not cold enough. And I'm like, first and foremost, the milk is so cold. Every time I open the refrigerator, I go, woof, chilly in here. And I touch the milk to my head and I go, that could break a fever. And you know how it goes in our house. I'm like, milk's not here for more than a day or two. So who cares? And I've been fighting him and fighting him and fighting him. And do you know what? Sure enough, our refrigerator is not actually within the legal limit of chill. We have just been keeping all of our food and meat and milk in essentially just a shady, shady tree. And I have had a lot of people over and I've been feeding people and I've been hosting parties. And to me, I go, that's why we pasteurize the milk. I mean, that's life, baby. I've always said I think refrigeration is a scam. I think with your nose if it's bad or not. You cook it, you drink it, you sweat it out. It's fine.
I want to go on record and say that I don't endorse this message.
Expiration dates are a scam. This need that we have in America to refrigerate everything is a scam. But anyway, so that was the French Girl Summer was when I learned that, in fact, our refrigerator only gets to 50 degrees. I was like, oof.
Oh, because the French don't refrigerate?
I would guess no, based on everything else I know about them. I can't say for sure, but that feels right, doesn't it?
Yeah. You wouldn't put a baguette in their fridge.
No, because you would eat it right away. And if you didn't eat it, you would make pan Perdue.
Totally.
Anyway, tomorrow it all comes to an end. We're having a refrigerator mechanic come and peep it. I guess our house is just going to be a fucking dungeon, a fucking ice bath. I swear to God, you marry a Canadian, you live in a hockey hut.
I guess I think that if you keep the fridge at the right fridge temperature, if you keep the doors closed, it doesn't have to cool down your whole house.
We live in America where there's nothing but oppression when it comes to air conditioning, ice, refrigeration temperatures. This is the coldest goddamn country.
I'm pretty sure we had a big war about whether or not things should be cold.
Ashley's out. Podcast is over. This episode is done. She's really done herself in, and there's no coming back.
Sorry. To God.
Ashley?
Yeah, Claire?
If you were a celebrity and you were to write a memoir, what would last week's chapter be called?
It would be called Right on Schedule, because I've been scheduling things. I've decided that I have to schedule 2 things a week. I've entered this lazy nothing version of my life that is very comfortable, but I never really do any things or have to be anywhere except here. And I think it's making me a worse person. And so I'm scheduling 2 things per week. And this week I had a workout class and I'm volunteering. And so that's the schedule.
Good for you.
And I'm excited to see if my world expands.
I'm sure it will at a moment's notice.
I can't wait. Anyway, should we talk about more saying yes to expansions?
Yes.
This week we are reading The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. How to dance it out, stand in the sun, and be your own person. This book was quick and light. And I think that if you were looking for a very quick dose of inspiration from someone who is much, much better than you, you would find it here. Overall, I guess I'm such a fan of Shonda Rhimes. It wasn't quite what I was hoping for. Shonda is the creator of Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, Private Practice, Bridgerton. She's a very prolific television writer, creator, producer. She also wrote Crossroads.
That's true.
A pretty good movie.
She owns Thursday nights on ABC, some of the most expensive television real estate there is.
Yes. And so for someone who does so much, her time to write a book was so little. And she really gave you what she could in, I would assume, 10-minute increments on Friday mornings.
I do want to read this one sentence from page 157, so I'm jumping to the middle.
Okay.
But I do think it speaks to this book. This book is not a memoir as much as kind of like a feel-good reminder that you're not alone. Shonda is just like you. If you think you're not good enough, Shonda doesn't think she's good enough either, and we're all similar in that way. But she has this sentence that says, 3 years ago, if someone had said something to me like, nothing works until you're really ready to work for it, I would have force-fed them butter until they weighed 1,000 pounds, because that sounds like crap. Everything sounds like crap until you're in the right mindset. Everything sounds like crap while you're still busy listing reasons you should get to eat that whole cake. And I do think that that's kind of like the crux of this book, is if you come to it and you're looking for a serious memoir, you're not going to get that. This is all going to sound kind of like frivolous nonsense with a couple of seeds of honesty and authenticity and vulnerability. But if you're in the mood to just say yes, I think there's a lot that you can find inspiring in here. And I think that it's sincere and it's sweet. And although it's not like this soul-probing, life-changing memoir, it's of its genre the best there is.
Yes. I will say if I had read this book from most other people, I would have thrown it against a wall. Coming from Shonda, there are parts of it that really ring hopeful and good. I mean, it's not a memoir. It's a reflection on about a year and a half of her life that has memoirish moments and is partially, I think, fully made up and twists and cuts a lot of corners to make it seem like these are problems you can relate to.
You know when Jimmy Kimmel is begging you to do his late night talk show and you just don't want to? That's a problem most women in America face.
I mean, we have that all the time and we always say, no, Jimmy. And then we realized it was Kimmel and not Fallon. And we were like, we were yelling at the wrong Jimmy.
There's so many Jimmys out there.
So this book starts out and Shonda calls herself a liar. She says, I'm a liar and I don't care who knows it. I make stuff up all the time. And she talks about how she has always gotten by on telling stories, half-truths. Without tales, the fiction, the stories I've spun, it's highly likely that right now, today, I'd be a quiet librarian in Ohio. And she talks about how she's always loved weaving these tales and it led to the life as a high-powered television creator that she has today. But she also makes up lies in her own life and she creates versions of a story in her own life that feel more comfortable to her. And she's built a world for herself that she feels more comfortable in. And she wasn't living in the real world.
So all good writers, there's the note and then there's the prologue. Writing about myself feels a lot like I have just decided to stand up on a table in a very proper restaurant, raise my dress and show everyone that I'm not wearing panties. That is to say, it feels shocking. It puts the bit of me that I usually keep to myself on display. And so she talks about how she's a real introvert. But, in this year of yes, it was all about pushing herself out of her comfort zone. And this book makes her uncomfortable, so that means she should be doing it. And then finally, we start with chapter 1, no.
And so this is where we get the impetus for her year of yes. She is at Thanksgiving with her sister. She loves her family. She has a very tight-knit family. They are all very cool and smart and unimpressed by her television career. She's talking about all of these cool accomplishments that she has been asked to do and asked to be a part of parties and events and TV show appearances. And she always talks about people want her to do things and she's just very busy. And so her sister goes, you never say yes to anything. And it stops her dead in her tracks. She's like, never say yes to anything. I'm a busy person. And she is a really busy person.
So there's a couple things here. She's like, the reason I can't say yes to all of these events is because I run and am the head writer for 2 television shows and I have 3 children, 1 tween and 2 under 3. I'm simply too busy to be doing live speaking engagements, acting opportunities, giving speeches. And I would have to say, I actually think that's a pretty good excuse. That is a very busy life.
The thing is, yes feels extremely shoehorned into this entire book. Like, I wonder if she actually had a year of yes at any point.
Yeah. I want to say I believe her, but she opens this book by saying, I'm a liar. So
Yeah.
I do agree that she knows how to make a narrative. I do think what happened is her sister said that to her. And it seems like that year on her birthday, which is when this year of yes really starts, she woke up miserable. And I actually found this book very interesting in regards to the Worm to the Wise we did recently about happiness in your life. Because this book is a perfect example of you could be at the height of your career.
The height of most people's careers.
I mean, the height of career.
Yeah.
She is in a rarefied level, all her own, of like the top maybe 10,000 people in the world success-wise, right?
Yeah, I will say to be at a level where you are like a TV creator where people know your name and say, well, that's a Shonda Rhimes show, so it's going to be good. I'm going to watch the new Shonda Rhimes show. Like, you have reached a pinnacle.
So she's very successful and have 3 children, and it seems like she's close with her family. She's the youngest of 6, which I think is important. She's a real introvert. She comes from a very academic family. Her mom has a PhD. I think her dad might have one too. They always pushed education. She went to Brown. She has all of this, and yet she finds herself saying, I'm miserable. I'm so unhappy. And no matter how successful she was in her career, being successful in your career, those accomplishments don't actually make you happy day to day. So this year is really about a point I think she reached where she started saying to herself, okay, I have to like reclaim my life and figure out what makes me actually happy moment to moment. And that's what the year of yes means. And because she is a brilliant writer, she's able to coin this term that then creates and weaves this thread throughout. But I agree with you. If she hadn't been trying to do little catchy cliches the whole time, I think it might have rang a bit more vulnerable. But the year of yes, I guess, is easier to sell.
So essentially, this book is funneled into yeses and nos, but it's about creating a new structure for your life where you put your own joy first.
Her sister says, you never do anything but work. You never have any fun. You used to have so much fun. Now all of these amazing opportunities are coming your way, once in a lifetime opportunities, and you aren't taking advantage of them. Why?
So then she's marinating on this idea for a little bit. Her sister has said, you never say yes to anything. And she is called for a Kennedy Center honors. And she goes to Washington and she celebrates with Barack Obama and Michelle Obama.
She's seated in their box and she sits right behind them. And it is like the thrill of her life.
And she realizes she has this epiphany in the middle of the night after she has this incredible experience. And she realizes that she would have said no if given the opportunity, because when they call you and say you're getting a Kennedy Center honors, they don't say like, do you want it?
But if they said, hey, we could get you behind Michelle and Barack, do you want to do it? She's like, I would have said no. I would have said I'm too nervous.
If they had asked me if I wanted to sit in the presidential box at the Kennedy Center honors, I would have said no. Ridiculous, but it's true. It's clearly true. I'm as sure of this as I am the need to breathe. I would have said no. Respectfully, graciously, I would have come up with a creative excuse, expressed both extreme honor and regret. The excuse would have been good. The excuse would have been brilliant. That is a tough one. She says she just doesn't like going to things, getting dressed up, having to travel, having to make sure everything is organized so that you can be out of reach for a couple of hours.
But more than that, she is an introvert. She was a born and bred introvert. And she says, I was just an unusual kid. Lucky for me, my parents held the unusual in high regard. And so her favorite thing to do when she was little was like play in the pantry and just use all of the cans to pretend that they were characters and make stories for them. Man, that pantry was fun. You see the problem? Did you read the problem? Man, that pantry was fun. That just came out of my mouth. I actually said that out loud while I typed it.
The thing is, a good story is not about purposely lying. The best stories are true. Giving good story just requires that I leave out the untidy bits. The bits where before I leave for the White House, I spend 10 minutes convincing myself that I do not have the stomach flu and that I'm fine. And she realizes that in order to create the best story, she needs to actually live her life and not sit in the pantry and create the version of the life that she thinks might be cool.
This book comes out when she's 43. And she's like, somehow at 43 years old, I feel even safer in the pantry now than I did as a kid. And that can't be true. And she says she realizes, I'm miserable. I'm a little ashamed to be telling you that right now. I'm miserable. Who in the hell do I think I am? A whiner, that's who. A great big old whiner person. You know who gets to be miserable? Malala, because someone shot her in the face. You know who else? The Chibok schoolgirls, because the terrorist group Boko Haram kidnapped them from school for forced marriage. And then she says, you know who else? Anne Frank. I will say, you're allowed to be unhappy. You don't have to be Anne Frank to be miserable.
I am miserable, truly, deeply unhappy. In December 2013, I am incredibly successful. I had 2 hugely popular television shows on the air. and had just retired a third. My company, Shondaland, was in the midst of working with Peter Norwalk to develop a show that would soon become our newest hit, How to Get Away with Murder. So yeah, from the outside, everything probably looked great. Here's another thing about this book that low-key bugged me. She spends a lot of time dislocating her arm to reach for a page count.
She repeats things like I've never seen it. And I guess it's like a effective writing skill because I did find this very readable and she is the successful writer, but yes.
There are words, sentences, paragraphs that are repeated over and over and over again. And one of them is, I was extremely successful. I had 2 to 4 shows on the air at all times. Like she has some version of this sentence so many times. And it's like, yeah, Shonda, that's why people are reading the book. Like I know, I watch Grey's Anatomy to this day. It is in season 19. And listen, I know she left in season 12 and the glory days really ended in season 10. And I'm aware of that. But like the power of Shonda, you are so successful that I still watch it. Okay. You don't have to keep repeating how successful you are at TV. We know.
Well, for me, I just meant even in a literal sense. She has this sentence, I'm miserable, I'm miserable, I'm miserable. I'm counting it out. I'm miserable, I'm miserable. She has it 7 times in this chapter. In the chapter before, she has that line, you never say yes to anything, 6 or 7 times. Like that is one of her writing styles, is that she keeps coming back to the sentence. I mean, the page before, she's talking about how besides Beyonce, she has a good life. She goes, unless that anyone is Beyonce. Damn, my life is so bad next to Beyonce's life. So is yours. Everyone's life is bad next to hers. If you know otherwise, if you know Beyonce's life is terrible for some reason, please do not tell me. I need to believe that Beyonce's life is perfect, but except for Beyonce, 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 Beyonce. It's very repetitive.
No, it's extremely repetitive and it was very noticeable. But the part where it starts to really grate on me is when she like continues to repeat, I had this roster of shows. I had this roster of shows. And I'm like, yeah. Okay.
And I've dedicated my life to watching them, Shonda, I know.
I'm aware.
I've lost thousands of hours.
If I could add up how much time I've spent watching, she has a couple of things in this book where she's like, I could deliver a baby on the table right now because I wrote Grey's Anatomy. And I'm like, yeah, I could deliver a baby because I watched Grey's Anatomy. Move on.
No, you couldn't.
Yes, I could, Claire. I fucking dare you to have cardiac arrest right now. She's tamponading. Does anyone have a pen?
So then she gets into how at this point in her life, she's miserable, but she's successful and she's gotten good at this thing called athlete talk. Athlete talk is, I'm just happy to be working for ABC. I'm proud to be part of the team. I'm just happy to be playing the game of basketball. I mean, writing for TV. And she says it's true, but she wasn't really a happy person.
I'm happy and proud and thrilled. I did like ABC. I still do. Hello, ABC. Okay, so this was actually written before her deal with ABC went into this shiter and she signed a huge deal with Netflix. I'm just sure Michael truly liked the Bulls, but athlete talk didn't have anything to do with liking my job. It had to do with sitting inside the pantry.
I had no real way to account for my unhappiness. For once, the storyteller had nothing to tell. I had no idea why I was unhappy, no specific moment or reason to point to. I just knew it was true. Whatever that spark is that makes each one of us alive and unique, mine had gone, stolen like the paintings on the wall, the flickering flame responsible for lighting me up from the inside, making me glow, keeping me warm. My candle had been blown out. I was shut down. I was tired. I was afraid, quiet and small.
I guess here's why the repeating of the credits annoyed me so much is because, like we said, I do think she's allowed to be miserable. And I think the way she keeps reiterating, like, you don't understand how successful I was. I was the Michael Jordan of TV.
Well, here's what's weird is she like compares herself to Michael Jordan. She's like, but I'm not Michael Jordan. And I'm like, but you are of TV. And I'm like, you are the Beyonce of TV.
Yes.
You are the Beyonce of TV. You are the Serena Williams of TV.
I wonder maybe it's just because time has evolved and I think we're more open to mental health struggles and things like that. But you don't have to list your credits and be like, but you don't understand I was unhappy. Like, people are allowed to be unhappy and you don't have to qualify how good things were to explain to me how bad things are.
I will say, as somebody who wasn't very familiar with Shonda Rhimes' work, I didn't even know about private practice.
What?
So to me, it was quite helpful.
Oh my God.
Did you watch that?
Of course I watched that. What do you think? I'm a fucking idiot?
So her birthday is January 13 and she wakes up and she goes downstairs and she says that morning she felt like she had a hangover and she decides via text to her friend, I am going to say yes to anything and everything that scares me for a whole year or until I get scared to death and you have to bury me. Ugh. And she says, I'm a very competitive person. If I set myself up to do something, I'm going to fucking knock it out of the park, which I believe her.
I believe her.
And she says, I'm not normal people competitive. I'm scary, psychotic competitive, which I believe because that's what it takes to be the best at anything.
Yes. You, Michael Jordan, and Beyonce, I believe, are all equally scary, psychotic.
I wouldn't want to play Scrabble with any of you.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be fun. I don't think it would be casual. But I do think that that's the one part of this book that I was missing is it's so much about how she's just like you. And I think that this book is more helpful than the book I would like. Like, I do think that there's a lot of women who probably read this book and felt inspired. And I hope there were, because she did have shit in her own life that she needed to fix. And I think she really hits home with, it's not the accomplishments. It's not anything but choosing to make yourself happy at whatever place in life you are in. And I think that that's a very important message for people. But I am deeply interested in what it's like to be as unique as she is. She's clearly like a different type of person. And I'm like, why? Were you born like that? What did something happen? Like, what made you so driven?
Yeah, I'm also raised in the Chicago suburbs. I also went to school in the Northeast. I have not created 5 to 6 psychotically successful TV shows.
You do have 5 of the worst webisodes ever made on YouTube.
Shonda, what makes us different? I am not enthusiastic, but I am determined. My logic is wildly simple. It goes like this. Saying no has gotten me here. Here sucks. Saying yes might be my way to someplace better. If not a way to someplace better, at least to someplace different. And I will say this, I think, is really good logic and really good advice. I think that people get very stuck in ruts and very afraid to do something different. But if you hate the way your life is, then doing something different just makes it differently bad, and that's still fine. The things that I want her to elaborate on, she just really doesn't. I want her to tell me who she is and what she did and what fuels her psychotic competitiveness and things like that, but we don't really get any of that.
I do think it's her parents.
Yeah.
There's a sentence or two in there that they were like raised to be the best. And I do think she had these 2 super smart parents who were like, there's 6 of you and you better be 1 through 6 when we're ranking people. When all the people are lining up. But something had to change. Having it all, this could not possibly be what having it all was supposed to feel like, could it? Because if it was, if this is what I spent all this time and energy working so hard for, if this is what the promised land looked like, was what success felt like, was what I sacrificed for, I didn't even want to consider it, so I wouldn't. I would not think about that. She just decided she would say yes. And I do think this goes back to, like, it's so easy for the rest of us who are not Shonda to be like, well, I would be happy if I was more successful. But look, she's successful. She's not happy either. So it really is upon all of us to be saying yes. Or, as we get later into this book, sometimes you say no.
But sometimes you say yes to saying no.
Life is a tricky balance of you're always saying yes unless you're saying no. But you should always be saying one of those things.
So the first thing she says yes to, it is giving a commencement speech at her Ivy League alma mater, Dartmouth.
In 6 months' time.
That actually didn't turn out to be quite so scary at the moment because it was 6 months away. And so she's like, yeah, I said yes. Done. Checkmate. But the next thing she says yes to, well, that turns out to be quite a scary feat because it is soon and it is James Kimmel.
They had been begging Shonda to do his late night show. She's always saying no. She has a publicist whose sole job it is to turn opportunities down. And suddenly she's like, all right, tell him yes. And everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Well, she says yes with a caveat.
She says, I will not do it live. So what do they do instead? An hour-long special on Shonda.
Imagine being like, Jimmy Kimmel live. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. For years, she says, I don't want to do it. Finally, she says, yes, Jimmy Kimmel, I will do it, but I won't do it live. And they say, okay, how about an hour-long Shonda special? If you won't do our TV show, what if we make you a new version of our TV show?
And you know what? For the first time in Jimmy Kimmel's history, he beat Jimmy Fallon in ratings that night. It turns out she's the best thing that ever happened to that show, so they were right to keep begging her. And she was right to have her demands. And there you go. The first yes, down the drain. Nothing but net.
In this kind of long chapter, she also explains why Jimmy Kimmel would want her or the other people from ABC on their show, like what that does for ratings to have people from ABC appear on other things on ABC.
She also explains that once she got to be interviewed by Oprah when they were interviewing all the Grey's cast. And when you ask her how was it, she can't tell you because she blacked out. That's important in terms of growth for later. I don't know. I think it's a good time for the audience now to reflect. When in your life have you been invited on Jimmy Kimmel? And why are you saying no? Are you possibly denying Jimmy Kimmel the greatest ratings of his lifetime? And if so, why? Why poor little Jimmy Kimmel? Let him have his success.
Why are you so mad at Jimmy Kimmel?
Whatever the Jimmy Kimmel in your life may be, maybe, I don't know, somebody said, come try ClassPass for free or something. Whatever your puny little version is, I'm sure you've got something.
Say yes, and it could be the highest rated ClassPass class you've ever taken.
Then we get into the Dartmouth thing that she had agreed to do 6 months before. At this point, she's had 6 months of saying yes, so she's a little bit more used to it. But one of the problems that this Dartmouth speech brings up is that she is going to have to leave her tweenage daughter's graduation a bit early.
And she has had a really hard time being a single mom. She does caveat several times that when she calls herself a single mom, she means she is literally single, but she does have an enormous pool of resources, including people and money and help.
She says, I say it aloud to no one, but I'm not sure I could have coped with more. Keeping up with 3 children, sleeping, working, writing, and trying to do it all well has been kicking my ass lately. But that moment in June, I was feeling pretty low about the mommy scorecard. The mommy scorecard is a thing I keep in my head. It's an imaginary series of zeros and tens that get dished out by some imaginary judgy bitch. She looks an awful lot like me. And she talks about, when her kids are like, but mommy, you didn't make it. Mommy, you didn't do this.
And she says it doesn't matter what I do make. If I miss something, then I haven't made it. And I will say this just is hard. And it's not even necessarily an imaginary thing. Like, I think it's more elaborately imagined, but people are so judgmental of parents, especially public-facing parents. I think it is really difficult to reconcile that with your career and achieving your dreams and also not being able to be at everything.
But this is more about her daughter saying things like, this is the 3rd recital you've missed. She'll remind me. And are you ever coming to one of my science fairs? It's not the 3rd recital, and I was just at the science fair last quarter, but she makes it sound like I wasn't, which makes me feel like I wasn't. Boom, a 0.
I will say that's too much science. I feel like the kids these days are doing too much.
Yeah, like if you have 25 soccer games a year, if someone can go to all 25, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
But if you go to 15, then your kid's like, well, you weren't at so many of them.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're not even good at soccer. You've got no promise. It's a waste of my freaking time. But so she gets to Dartmouth and she's working on her speech, and it's the same kind of speech I've always written. Pithy, witty, snappy. It has highs, lows, jokes, smart, shiny. But there's nothing of me in here. I speak from behind a curtain. It's like a magic trick. I open my mouth, but you never actually hear me. You just hear my voice. This speech is all athlete talk. I don't know if I want them to know me because I still don't truly know me. And then she sits down and writes an authentic speech about how hard it is to be a working mother and how if you're succeeding in one part of your life, you're failing in another part of your life. She actually does thrice in this book just a full printout of a speech she's given, which is something I respect in terms of she's a busy woman. She doesn't have time to write it again. She already wrote it once. So her 3 lessons in the Dartmouth speech are 1, it's hard to be a working mother. And then ditch the dream, be a doer, not a dreamer.
And lesson 3, anyone who tells you they're doing it all perfectly is a liar. And I mean, that's true. No one's doing it all perfectly, not even Athena Calderon.
Where is she going? If anybody has eyes on her, if anyone's got a deed in their hand, I need to know, where could she be going?
And then the next chapter is about the person who helps her do it all, Jenny McCarthy, not the anti-vaxxer.
She has a nanny named Jenny McCarthy. And so she talks about how weird it is that women aren't ever allowed to admit that they have nannies. And when high-powered women are asked, how do you do it all? They're like, I fold laundry at night. Or like, I love organizing my time. And she's like, no, it's because they have help. But the reason women aren't ever allowed to admit they have help is because the minute you say that, you get bullied. Which I do think is a thing of the past.
Yeah.
But I have seen it in memoirs where women will be like, I don't want my child to have a nanny. I raised my child myself. And then I'm like, okay, but then literally who's watching your kid when you and your husband are at work? Because I've seen you on red carpets together. The kid isn't there. Who's home with the kid? Just like simply there's childcare involved. Call them a nanny or don't. But like, yes, you do.
She talks about how these women are ashamed because she has actually shamed fellow moms before she had her own kid. Someone asked her if she was going to be hiring a nanny. And she's like, if I'm not willing to take care of my baby myself, why would I have a baby in the first place?
And she said that friend never spoke to her again, which is valid. I think there's moments of true vulnerability in this book, but her only real flaw is she's a people pleaser, which I don't find to be a real flaw. I find it a bit of a cop-out to be like, you don't understand. My biggest problem is that
I'm too good of a friend.
Yeah, like I just try to help everybody.
I'm too on time.
But I will say these things that she said to people, I'm like, that's fucked up. So she says that to her friend who's like, oh, are you looking for nannies? And she's like, I would never.
She has a really interesting insight, I think, about how being a mom is not a job. And she's not talking about being a stay-at-home parent or a full-time caretaker or anything like that. She's saying just the identity of mom is an identity, not a job. Because after she was shamed about not participating enough in a PTA situation, and she says she works, and they're like, well, being a mom is a job too. And she goes on this rant about how it is not, because being a mom is who you are. You can leave your work at work, you can leave a job forever, but you can't stop being a parent. And you have to be a parent in addition to a job you have if you have a job. Like, you are all of these things. And so being a mom itself, it's not fair to call that a job. And I found that very interesting.
Being a mother still happens if you don't stay home with your kids. It still happens if you get a job and go to work. It happens if you're an Army Ranger and you're deployed. You're still a mother, still not a job. Working or staying home, one is still a mother. One is not better than the other. Both choices are worthy. Motherhood remains equally painfully death-defying and difficult. Either way, it does.
We have been critical in the past of people not being honest about the realities of being a working mom.
Like when Amy Poehler gets on and goes, it's not hard. You just get a nanny and you just live your life. I'm like, that doesn't sound like anybody's experience that I've ever met.
Right. And I think that it just is the truth that there is a choice to be made and both choices are hard. To give up your career would be extremely difficult for most people. And to give up time at home is extremely difficult for most people. You just had to make a choice at some point, and every choice is difficult. And I like hearing about it because I just think it's very honest.
One of her breaking points at a school that her child used to go to was that the PTA mom said that for the bake sale, everything had to be homemade. And Shonda was like, are you fucking kidding me? And she's like, what do you care whether or not it's homemade? I'm like, that mom probably doesn't even let her kids eat sugar. And she's like, don't tell me what quality time is with my kid. Don't tell me like how I have to be a mother. I will spend time with my child how I see fit. And if somebody needs to be sent to school with a cupcake, I will get them a cupcake. It does not matter who made that cupcake. And I agree. But then she talks about later meeting new moms and how everybody is just so much nicer and more inviting. And she says, these moms leave no mom behind. I love it here. I don't think they are different from the moms at the other school. It's that I'm different. All the moms were great all along. I just couldn't see it. Now I'm no longer looking for the enemy, so I no longer see the enemy. And so finally in this year, I allow myself to fully lay down my weapons.
And speaking of quality time with her kids, she sets another rule, another yes rule. She realizes that she is starting to feel irrelevant in her own home. Her kids are growing up. They're creating their own worlds to play in, their own pantries, their own experiences. And because she is so busy, especially now that she's saying yes to activities and things and parties, she's just around less. And one day she's getting ready to present an award. And one of her kids says, Mama, want to play? And those little words we hear 100 times throughout this chapter. She really repeats want to play a lot. But she says, yes, I do. And she creates a yes rule that whenever one of her kids says want to play, or when the older kid has their own version of want to play, she will stop and play for 15 minutes because it's so important to spend time just sitting on the ground playing.
And she says, this isn't just about playing with your kids. This yes is about giving yourself the permission to shift the focus of what is a priority from what is good for you over to what makes you feel good. I have shifted my priorities. My job is still incredibly important. It's just that playing with my kids is now more important than my job. You may say, that's nice for you. You're the boss of your job. I'm a cashier, so please don't tell me how I can turn my back on my job and still feed my family, stupid TV lady with your lace shoes and your diamonds. I hope your tiara squeezes your brain right out of your head. And I agree with you. She says her answer to that is that actually kids only want to play with you for 15 minutes before they lose interest and move on. So you should just play with your kids for 15 minutes and everyone has 15 minutes. And then that's all it really takes is like 15 minutes of uninterrupted time with your kids is all they really need a day. I do wonder if that's true for everybody. I understand that she is very busy. She has a lot going on. That's what works for her life. I don't know that that's like a universal rule that kids only need 15 minutes of time with their one parent a day. I don't want to be critical. I will say, I would just say out the gate, that does seem like not that much time.
Yeah.
But the way that so much of this book is like, whatever works, you just got to find it. But to be like, without a doubt, 15 minutes is the only amount of time you need with a kid. They get it. They'll remember your face. They'll be grateful later. You'll meet them at graduation. You pay in private school tuition? They need 15 minutes. They're going to public school maybe half an hour. But I'm working pretty hard and they have a good life. So 15 it is.
And, you know, she talks about setting boundaries with work and getting better at being home for dinner and how even if there's a crisis on set, she can still be home from 6 to 8 and handle the crisis later. Technology should be making things easier rather than harder. So she should be able to work from home. And I will say, do I believe that she's home by 6 every day? No.
Well, she says this, I make a rule that I will not work on Saturday or Sunday unless it's an emergency or unless the show is filming. Those shows have how many episodes a year? 25 episodes.
But I think she's fully off Grays. She just like her name is on it.
Okay, but she still has 2 full-time TV shows that each have about 24 episodes. Okay, so I will not work on a weekend unless it's an emergency or it's one of the 8 months a year that I'm working full-time. I mean, that's what it takes to be at the top. Like, these are the sacrifices she made, and like her kids will have it better than my kids in many ways. I'll have more time because I'm less successful. I'm not driven or talented, and that's a real win for them, for my children.
That means yes to 38 minutes of play. And then we get into what I think might have been probably one of the most vulnerable sections of this book, and that is saying yes to her body. She has a day that she wakes up during her year of yes where she realizes that she is the biggest she's ever been in her entire life. I am so fat that I'm uncomfortable in my own skin. And she talks a lot here about body positivity. What she is not saying is that other people can't exist in their bodies in whatever way they exist in their bodies. She's saying that she woke up and realized that she was uncomfortable in her own skin, that she wasn't happy with the size she was or the way she felt.
Physically. And she talks about how it had happened slowly as she had gotten more successful. The more successful she got, the more she was not able to enjoy her private life. And she kind of would retreat home and do this thing she calls veal practice, which is where you sit very still and lay on the couch like a piece of veal while you eat veal, which actually sounds incredible. I was like, I'm going to start doing veal practice.
She also talks about how just the rising expectations led to more stress and just less movement. Shondaland was a brand now. The studio expected us to produce more shows. The network expected me to maintain the quality of the ones currently on the air. Now I owned an entire night of the most expensive real estate on television. TGIT had taken over social media. Everyone around me seemed invested, very invested. I started having nightmares about getting canceled. I wasn't worried about writing the shows or making shows. I was worried about rising expectations. I was worried about the stakes.
You can't be raised Black in America and not know. This wasn't just my shot, it was ours. I had to do everything right. I had to keep it all afloat. I had to run to the top of the mountain. I could not rest. I could not fall. I could not stumble. I could not quit. Failing to reach the summit was not an option. Failing would be bigger than just me. Blowing it would reverberate for decades to come.
I am what I have come to call an FOD, a first only different. She loves to create acronyms. We are a very select club, but there are more of us than you'd think. We know one another on site. We all have the same weary look in our eyes. The one that wishes people would stop thinking it was remarkable that we can be great at what we do, while Black, while Asian, while a woman, while Latino, while gay, while paraplegic, while deaf. Because when you are an FOD, you are saddled with that burden of an extra responsibility, whether you want it or not.
I got into the habit of working as hard as I could all the time. My life revolved around work, and outside of work, I took the path of least resistance. I didn't have the energy for the difficult conversations or arguments, so I smiled and let people get away with treating me however they wanted. Losing yourself does not happen all at once. Losing yourself happens one no at a time. No to going out tonight, no to catching up with an old roommate, no to attending the party, no to going on vacation, no to making a new friend. Losing yourself happens 1 pound at a time.
She just retreated completely within herself as she got more successful. And her pre-fame friends thought that she had gotten Hollywood. Her post-fame friends, she just didn't really make new friends. She had acquaintances from events and things like that, but she really didn't engage with anyone outside of work because she was stressed and afraid, and it was just all too much.
So she notices she's getting weight, but she's like, from a feminist standpoint, I did not want to care. I did not want to like judge myself based on how other people perceived me. My body's a container I carry my brain around in. And I said it while I enjoyed mac and cheese with bacon in it. You heard me, bacon. My body is just the container full of bacon that I carry my brain around in. And maybe it is. Maybe it is just the container I carry my brain around in. But so is a car. And if the car is broken down and busted, my brain isn't going anywhere. Same goes for my container.
She realizes that she has been saying yes to being fat, which is why I'm now so fat. I'm not a failure. I am successfully fat. I didn't let go of the wheel. I turned the car down a different road.
She says she had really been turning to food to get away from all of her stresses, and she did not feel good anymore. The food works. There's the rub. There's the trouble. It works. I would be eating a whole bucket of fried chicken right now, this very minute, if I thought I could still fit into these pants afterwards. If I was still okay with being dead inside. The thing is, I'm not. I'm not okay with being dead inside at all. Being numb no longer suits me. It's ill-fitting and I'm antsy about it. I find myself snapping back at people more or writing little rants in my emails when someone's upset me. I don't want to be numb. I want to tell someone who's upset me to take their attitude and shove it right up there.
The problem with fatness isn't the fatness, it's me. If I'm going to change, I have to move on. I can't wait precious time hovering over the I wishes and if onlys. And she has this realization that all these people who say, like, you have to learn to like salads, you have to enjoy exercise because of endorphins. She's like, what if I just didn't enjoy it? Like, what if it was a challenge that I set for myself and I had to complete the challenge? Like, not everything you do is fun. And what if I just embrace the fact that it is a challenge? It's not a fun, leisurely activity.
I work hard. That's how I succeed. That's how anyone succeeds. So why in the world did I think weight loss would be any different? That's a light bulb for her. Once I stopped expecting to like it, once I stopped demanding that losing weight be easy or pleasant, once I stopped waiting for the band to start playing, paying attention to what went into my mouth became tolerable. And then in a year, she lost like 140 pounds and she feels great.
Yeah, she enjoys fashion a lot more and she's more excited about these events that she's saying yes to because she's excited to get dressed for them.
She also has this ability to like run around with her kids in a way that she couldn't have physically before. And she's like, I'm going to live longer and healthier because of this. Mm-hmm. And that will make me a better mother for them. And then she has a whole, so how did I do it? She went to a doctor. She did exercise she liked. She drinks a lot of water. Her rule is I can eat anything I want, but it has to be exactly what I'm craving. Only what I'm craving. She also says that like now that she's lost weight, she feels like she realizes that part of it was a response to her gaining celebrity. That as a writer, she always found it like really gross to want to be famous, that she always wanted to be behind the camera. And her dream was to write herself alone. And now that she's getting over it and getting past her shyness and introversion, she's saying, I'm getting used to being seen. I am realizing that there's a part of me that wants to be seen and that it's okay to want to be seen. It's okay to like being seen. I'm being seen.
And I think that that is very honest because obviously most of the yeses in this year of yes have been about putting herself out there publicly. There's one yes that's about being more present in her family. And the rest of it is just say yes to being the celebrity that you are. Her next yes is another big speech. She gets the Hollywood Reporter's Sherry Lansing Award at the annual Women in Entertainment Breakfast.
And she says, I've been enjoying this year in a way I haven't enjoyed life in a long time. I'm excited and I'm vibrant and I'm feeling alive. I've made progress. I've gotten so much better at this, but I have no friends in the industry outside of the ones who work on my shows. And she's like, I'm on the list, but I'm not of the list. So she decides to go and she writes a speech. And you know what? It's about how she's like, I didn't break the ceiling. All the women that came before did. And they paved a path. And it's actually a very generous, graceful speech. You could watch it on YouTube if you don't want to read the book. At another event that she celebrated at, she realizes how hard it is for women to take compliments. And one of her yeses is just saying yes to taking a compliment. And the trick is, when someone says something nice to you, say thank you, period. I will say she tells a funny story about a man in an elevator complimenting her about her dress, being like, oh, I like that color. And she had just that morning decided she was going to say yes, thank you. And she like loses. She's like, thank you. I bought it by accident. And he just like gets off the elevator. He's really freaked out. And she was like, damn.
She goes, you say thank you, you smile, and you shut up. There's nothing else that's required. And it is really hard. We've talked a lot about how hard it is to take compliments. It's very stressful for some reason because it feels braggy.
And that's a big fear of hers, is that people are going to think she's too full of herself. So she's like offered a role on The Mindy Show, and she loves Mindy Kaling. They're both Dartmouth grads. They're both FODs, as she says. But she's like, I'm so scared if I showed up on the show, people will be like, who does she think she is? She thinks she's an executive producer or writer, and now she can just act. And then she's like, why would I let that hold me back? I'm allowed to do things I'm offered. I don't think it ever occurred to me before how much and how often women are praised for displaying traits that basically render them invisible. She sacrificed everything for her children. She never thought about herself. She gave up everything for us. She worked tirelessly to make sure we had what we needed. She stood in the shadows. She was the wind beneath our wings.
This is good, we're told. It's good how mom diminishes and martyrs herself.
And she's like, no, I'm a hardworking woman and I'm very successful and I want to be a role model for my kids. I want to be the woman who was herself and did things for herself.
Thank you, smile, shut up. And she realizes when she does her thank you, smile, shut up, she goes on the Mindy Project, she has this experience. It is an incredible day for her. And she realizes that when she does her thank you, smile, shut up, she begins to actually appreciate the compliments. Instead of fighting back or panicking when you get a compliment, if you just let it hit you, you start to feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
The compliments mean something to me. More important, the fact that someone paused to take the time to give me the compliment means something to me. I think that's really nice. She starts to feel more powerful. Everyone's got some greatness in them.
So now it's been a full year. I'm well into 2015 when I realized that the year of yes should have ended several months ago. The concept of ending my year of yes leaves me with a hollow feeling. I walk around for a few days thinking maybe I'm coming down with something. I'm only just beginning to understand that the very act of saying yes is not just life-changing, it's life-saving. I now see two paths, a ragged, rocky one that goes up to the top of the mountain, and a nice, easy one that heads down under it. I can fight to make the rocky climb, get a few bruises, risk getting hurt, and I can stand on the mountaintop and breathe the air, or I can take the easy route underground. There's no sun down there, no air, but it's warm and it's safe. Saying no is a way to disappear. Saying no was my own slow form of suicide.
And then we get into saying yes to saying no, which means saying yes to having difficult conversations where you have to say no. So she gives us an example of being 15 in driver's ed. I honestly don't think it's that interesting.
He just thought she was a more experienced driver, so he took her on the highway, even though she was scared. And she's like, why didn't I just say no? But I do think that that's how they teach you. That's what they did to me. You just one day have to get on the highway.
And it leads her into realizing that there are very powerful conversations. Like when Rosa Parks said no to giving up her seat, that was saying yes to a difficult conversation.
She acknowledges that those are different. Although both transportation-based.
So she has a little bit of a lead up about how Grey's Anatomy actually made her a little bit miserable because Grey's Anatomy was her first television job. She was never a staff writer on a TV show. She was a movie writer, and then she was the creator, writer, and executive producer of Grey's Anatomy. And having this much power and this much responsibility was extremely stressful for her. And one of her first difficult conversations, the one that really gave her back the power in this show, was saying no to the actor that they wanted to cast as Christina. She didn't like the person that every single other person involved wanted, and she was just hiding from them. And they're like, okay, well, you're holding up an entire show, so you have to say yes or you have to say no. And she said yes to saying no. And the next day, she met Sandra Oh, who ended up playing Christina Yang and changed the course of history, I believe.
Even though I've become a master at saying no at work, it's different in my personal life. Everything is different in your personal life. I'm great at taking care of people, so why am I so bad at taking care of myself? Why am I so unwilling to show myself the same kindness and consideration? This problem did not change as I got more successful at work. It got worse. And she talks a lot about how, like, as she moved up, people just came out of the woodwork to sap off of her. And then she says this, which I think is one of the most important quotes in the book. You know what happens when all of your dreams come true? Nothing. I realized a very simple truth, that success, fame, having all my dreams come true would not fix or improve me. It wasn't an instant potion for personal growth. Having all of my dreams come true only seemed to magnify whatever qualities I already possessed. So my inability to be a shark, to pope someone, to fix, to handle, to say no, still powerfully in place at work on behalf of my shows, my people. But outside the office, on my own behalf, somehow I am back in the pantry again. I was like a helpless baby lamb waiting to be slaughtered. And then she talks about, like, all these people just assumed she was so rich. And she's like, I'm not rich. And I was like, Shonda.
Okay.
If you are not rich, I need to talk to your agent because somebody has done you dirty. Why would you not be rich? You own Thursday Night's TV. She's like, I can't take care of my family for 6 or 7 generations. And I'm like, I think you might still be rich.
Trust that the go-getters you're raising can maybe take care of themselves 7 generations down the line.
I think if you're only seeing your kids for 15 minutes a day, that's going to give them a little bit of get up and go to try to prove they're worth your love. So don't worry about that.
Anyway, she talks about the rise in success leading to some toxic people in her life revealing themselves, and she has to say yes to saying no to them. Someone asked for money. She says it was a pretty exorbitant amount of money, and she had to say no.
And when she said no, that person freaked out. And she said it was actually such a relief because 6 months ago, she would not have been able to say no to this person for fear of this moment. And there's something about sitting in the eye of the storm saying, well, this is the thing I was so afraid would happen. And here it is happening, and it's not that bad. And if anything, she's almost grateful that here this friend is like revealing who they really are. And like, what is a friendship if you have to buy them out?
Difficult conversations are something of a gamble, and you had to be willing to be okay with the outcome. She's still having trouble speaking up for herself. And I think that that is the main thing that the year of yes is about. And these last chapters are where she's really just shoehorning it in, like saying yes to saying no. I don't really know what she's talking about from here on out, but I think that it's a very Gina Davis type listening to yourself and like existing for yourself.
It's been unexpectedly glorious so far. Simply being willing to have the conversations acted as a sort of magical spell. Some potion was tossed into the ether of the universe because the moment I said yes to the challenge, the moment I was open to having the conversation, suddenly in that instant, my life was changed. I grew more courageous. I shed some shyness, some awkwardness, some social fear. Each time I said yes, I gained new friends and new experiences and found myself getting involved with projects. I laughed more. I was bolder. I was brazen. And as busy as I was, I felt like I had more free time than ever. I realized I'd been wasting a huge amount of time and energy on complaining and feeling sorry for myself, being dark and twisty. Now I wasn't interested in being that person, not when it was so much easier just to open my mouth and talk. And she says like she became obsessed with having hard conversations because of how much easier it makes the rest of your life.
I will say that is true. Having a definitive answer to something you're stressed about is stressful, but there is some relief.
It's called Say Yes to People, this next chapter, and it's about how she won an award for having gay characters on TV. And I guess happy June, you guys. Happy Pride Month.
Yeah, happy Pride Month. It is one of those things where I'm like, okay, this was just shoehorned into the book because she was able to take up pages by including another speech.
How do I feel about gay people? I say yes to them.
Her points in this chapter are good. People are always like, oh, how are you able to create such diverse characters on TV? And she's like, I'm not going out of my way to create diverse characters. I'm normalizing humans. I made a show about a hospital where it looked like the people you would see at a hospital, only hot.
Which, thank God, because if there's one thing I don't want normalized on TV, it's uggos. Never to uggos. Say no to uggos.
This part I actually really liked. The goal is everyone should get to turn on the TV and see someone who looks like them and loves like them. But just as important, everyone should turn on the TV and see someone who doesn't look like them and love like them, because perhaps they will learn from them. And this, I think, is very interesting. Like this, I really agree with, because I think we're seeing so much of people like obsessing over covering every single base, and it's taking the authenticity out of a TV show because they're trying to be like, okay, but we don't have an asexual character. I respect if it fits into the story, but like sex education, I think that the last season got so out of hand because they were like trying to have someone represent every term that they had ever heard. And I'm like, that is good because those things aren't represented on TV, but the way you've done it here by trying to rush through everything one per episode, you're laying it on quite thick. But I think that when you look at it from this perspective of, yeah, you should have people see things that aren't their normal lives, That is really interesting. And what they do see most often is just white couples living white suburban lives. And that is not good. But when you just start to weave in other stories and like put other things on TV, not to cover the bases, but to showcase experiences, that's nice. And that's what Shonda does quite well.
This whole next chapter, do you want to cover? It's up to you. It's a chapter about the last scene of Christina Yang on Grey's Anatomy.
When I tell you I bawled.
You at this chapter or at that episode?
At that episode. And not even the first time I saw it. When I rewatched it during the pandemic and the Christina leaving scene happens, I cried like a bitch. I love Christina and Meredith's friendship so much. I think it's the most important relationship that's ever happened on television. And the scene is so good. So this chapter is about saying yes to finding the right song for Christina's exit. And when I tell you they knocked it out of the fucking park, Where Does the Good Go by Tegan and Sarah, incredible stuff. But I don't know that we needed this like long winding chapter about how Christina Yang was her best friend.
This is actually another chapter about her cutting out a different friend. She says, when you used to be an unhappy person and you become a happy person, unhappy people do not like it when fellow unhappy people become happy. And she has this friend who she noticed starts being meaner to her, and she goes to her siblings and she's like, what do you think I should do? And they're like, she's always been mean to you. And then Shonda's like, I realized it was my fault because I had invented this character where I called her funny and gracious and loyal and loving. And when I looked at her, I realized she was none of those things. She was the opposite. I just pretended she was a good person and she actually sucks. So I cut her out of my life because she's toxic. I don't know. This was the one thing I didn't like in this episode. I think that there's ways to say like this friendship or this relationship did not work out without labeling somebody as they're toxic, I'm good, they were bringing me down, they're poison. I think it's possible that people meet at different times in lives and diverge, and there's wounds that go unaddressed. Like sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I think that's true in relationships and in friendships. That doesn't mean that necessarily either person is good or bad or toxic or not.
I think that is one of the things that a couple hundred pages into a book that doesn't really give you very many details starts to get grating, because you're not actually getting the truth of any of the problems. You're getting a very glossed over version of it. Like, they were toxic, so I cut them out. And it's like, all right, in order for me to really care about what's happening here, you need to tell me a story.
Most of this book I liked because I felt it was about her and like accountable. But the friendship chapters were a couple where it was like, you know, my problem is I'm just too nice to people. And everybody else's problem is they're so toxic. I mean, that's like what 22-year-olds on TikTok say about a situationship. That's not like a profound analysis of like the end of a decades-long friendship. I also don't think it's helpful to people to just be like, well, are they toxic? Cut them out.
Yeah. And this next reveal I found very interesting because I have never really known anything about Shonda's personal life. I know she has a couple of children.
I didn't know she had kids until that Dartmouth speech, which I do think went semi-viral maybe. And I was like, Shonda has kids? I kind of assumed she was like a single woman who had not had children.
I knew that she was a single woman. I knew that she'd had children via adoption and surrogacy. So this was very interesting that she had been engaged recently. I don't think she's ever publicly been in a relationship as far as I know. And so this chapter, she talks about being engaged and how she knew in her core that she'd always wanted to be a mother, but she never in her life cared that much about marriage. And she kept delaying this conversation with her fiance about how she actually didn't want to get married.
And she said it came down to this: let's just keep dating, but marriage is a financial trap. It's a way of owning women. Unless it's going to be absolutely perfect, which she's seen. Her parents have a perfect relationship. She does not want it. And she's like, I don't have the time to make this perfect for you. And she says, it takes a lot of work to make somebody else a priority. I don't want to prioritize you over working, and I don't want you in my house. She's like, I work and it takes me a really long time to get in the zone to write. If you come in and ask me if I want water, and now I'm fucked up and I don't want that. I love writing, and who I am, I barely have time for that. And I just don't have time for you. And so he leaves.
It doesn't seem to me like she is in any way open to having a partner in her life.
I agree.
And so this was just obviously not going to work out. And I think it's good that she noticed that and said that before they moved in together, before they got married. When she talks about the version of her life that she likes, there really is no room in it for another person. And I think that it seems like in this year, she was really discovering herself and figuring out who she is and what makes her happy. And so I don't think being in a relationship during that time probably would have worked out for the best.
She has chosen her priority. And that's what I guess marriage is. It's like choosing the other person as a priority. And she's like, I can't do that. And she says she doesn't believe in divorce. She goes, if we get married, we are never fucking getting divorced. And one day you're not going to be happy when you come home and I'm on show number 100 and you're still not important to me. Like, you'll never be as important to me as my job. And I bet that'll make you mad one day and you won't be allowed out of my clutches.
I mean, I like that she is a single woman who is older and her friends say, we just want you to be happy. And she says, okay, why is a relationship the only thing that would do that? I have a quite fulfilled life.
She says she has never gotten more praise from friends or family than when she was engaged to this man. And that is compared to the birth of her 3 children, all of the TV show success, getting award upon award.
I cannot believe that after the Denny Duquette drama, not one fucking person made her feel appreciated.
Lost on me. I would say having a baby.
I would say the plane crash episode.
My happy ending is not the same as your happy ending. And yours is not the same as my sister Dolores's or my sister Sandy's or Zola's or Betsy's or Gordon's or Scott's or Jenny McCarthy's. Everyone has their own version. We all spend our lives kicking the crap out of ourselves for not being this way or that way, not having this thing or that thing, not being like this person or that person, for not living up to some standard we think applies across the board to all of us. We all spend our lives trying to follow the same path, live by the same rules. I think we believe that happiness lies in following the same list of rules and being more like everyone else. That is wrong. There is no list of rules. There's one rule. The rule is there are no rules. Happiness comes from living as you need to, as you want to, as your inner voice tells you to. Happiness comes from being who you actually are instead of who you think you are supposed to be. Being traditional is not traditional anymore. There are no fairy tales. Be your own narrator and go for a happy ending. One foot in front of the other. You will make it.
Can I tell the really sweet story she tells about her parents, though?
Yeah.
It was so cute. So she's talking about like what love looks like. And she's like, my parents are each other's match perfectly.
That they're meant for each other. MFEO.
Yeah. She talks about one time when she was sharing a room with them because she was living in Los Angeles. She said that her parents had come to visit her and she gave them her bed and she slept on the floor in her studio apartment. And she thought we would like just lay down and go to sleep. But they start talking and her mom goes, I was thinking about Maslow's theory of psychosexual representation and how it relates to Stockholm syndrome. My dad responds, I was thinking about that too. Like that, with 2 exclamation points in his voice. And then my parents proceeded to have a long, enthusiastic conversation about whatever the hell this topic is about. That's how well matched they are, because my dad was thinking about that too. My mom was thinking about it, and my dad was thinking about it too, and they both found it interesting. That's so cute.
She says they just walk around the house, like following each other around like they're little ducks who have imprinted upon each other, and it's so cute. She's like, if it's not that, I don't want it.
If you've seen that, what else is there to want?
So the book ends to say yes to being beautiful, and it's about being on the cover of Entertainment Weekly and allowing her makeup to get done and all the cool things she's gotten to do and feeling seen.
And how they made her beautiful, and then she felt beautiful. And she looked at the photos and she was like, yeah, I'm doing good.
She goes, I love her. Staring at these photos, I now know that my year of yes has always been about love. It's just love. The little girl with the canned vegetables opened that pantry door just enough to peer through the sliver of door into sunlight. She too sees this beautiful woman bathed in light, wearing the red dress and the big smile on her face.
She thanks her sister for inspiring her year of yes. And her sister was like, I did not invent this concept. I gave you permission to do something that you should have done a long time ago. You were existing in your life and now you're living your life. And it's very good to watch.
I will be happy. I will be worth it. Always a work in progress. Always dancing. Always in the sun. Yes. Always dancing in the sun. Yes. 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 But sometimes no.
I will say this book is nice. It's a joyful read. It's inspiring. I would love to get a real memoir from Shonda.
I would too. I'm sure it'd be very interesting. I have to say I didn't hate this book. I think of all the books that are like inspiring, she has the grounds to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This book is not that different. Doesn't sound crazy in theme to like Tinks's book maybe.
Yeah.
It's a lot about how to shift your perspective on your own life and how to chase what makes you happy. But this one doesn't grate on me or make me mad at all because I agree with everything she says. Everything comes from this place of like wisdom and she's done it. There's something about an adult woman with success being like, here's what worked, here's what didn't, here's how I changed, here's how I grew. That I appreciate and I believe her. And I mean, it was the weest bit corny, but in a way that like you need a little corn in your life.
I will also say that these easy, corny books are not actually easy. And because she is a talented writer, like, yes, this book was cheesy. But unlike one of those Tinks books, which we covered on the Patreon, if you're curious about it, there is like a narrative arc throughout it. Like she starts off simply a shadowy figure of her own life and she ends excited to be at a photo shoot and happy to see photos of herself and proud of her accomplishments. And I think that that actually is a huge leap for a lot of people, especially someone who views themselves as a writer who doesn't necessarily want to be a public persona, but finds themselves as a public persona and realizes, actually, maybe I do kind of want to be famous.
I think this is the best no facts, all vibes book we've read.
Yes. This
is as good a book you can get from somebody who's not willing to tell you a goddamn thing.
Yes.
If you're looking for a beach read before you go back to school and got to tackle a big project, I would recommend it. What would your ranking of this book be?
Okay, in terms of fertile soil to chomp on, 3 out of 5.
I said 3.5. Yeah, 3.5, I'd say. If you and your friends read it, you'd have a great chat on the beach with a mug.
But wormtinis? How many wormtinis would I sip with Shonda? I hope 10 out of 5.
I would be actually quite intimidated. I would actually say 3 out of 5 because I would feel very embarrassed that I've never watched any of her shows. That I'd want to be like, please let me learn from you. I respect you so much. And she'd be like, oh, what do you like about me? I'd be like, the idea.
I will say we are drinking wormtinis until you dance it out to Where Does the Good Go with me. I feel like there was a couple years of my life that were steeped in Shonda culture. Like me and my roommates in LA, I had roommates that like wanted to become Shonda Rhimes. We would watch TV on Thursdays. Like we would sit down to watch ABC on Thursday nights. I lived in like Shonda culture for a couple of years.
You lived in Shondaland?
Yeah. My house had an in-unit washer dryer. I don't know what's more
Shondalandy than that. All right, you guys, we love you so much. And who do we love the most?